Today the session's going to be on cyberbullying and cyber aggression. I'm trying to figure out where to look. And I came to this topic because I used to be a middle school teacher, and you really get to see bullying firsthand. And then now with, as Cynthia can tell you, with the rise with the internet and accessibility, it has become out of hand, let's say. Teachers don't know how to address it, schools don't know how to address it, and what happens is technology, it goes faster than the law can follow. And my daughter's an attorney, and the law only changes when something happens. And so it has to happen, and then they enact the law. And so with cyberbullying, it's we're worrying about schools overstretching their reach, like into the community and stuff, because that's not really against the law. That's against the law. You can't go into someone's home. So here, I'm going to talk about it globally, because people tend to think it's an American problem, but it's over the internet. It's on the rise. It can either accompany, or it can even trigger other forms of bullying amongst these kids. Now, the way we define it also is personal web pages, can be posted on blogs, email, discussion groups, message boards, chat rooms, messenger, cell phones. Even now with the sexting, and they think it was, what was the one that used to dissolve in 30 seconds? Snapchat? Yes. They used to have that. And what they didn't realize is what you can do is take a picture and you've got it forever. And then people were posting it. And so you have to understand that the prefrontal lobe of adolescence is not fully developed to mid-20s. And so these kids are taking pictures and posting them, thinking that it's only going to stay there. The internet, as Cynthia can tell you, is forever. In Japan, I want to give you a global perspective. There was a case, so they made a law. A kid in Japan is that any physical, psychological assault, regardless of location, means, or occasion, constitutes bullying, and target a victim if they suffer psychological distress. And that came about after, well, I'll show you on the next one. It was, kids started killing themselves. They were being bullied to death. And it made up 4.7% of all bullying cases, and that was at the International Internal Affairs and Communications Ministry in Japan. The number is about 12. Cyberbullying tends to be more prominent in the higher grades, and that goes along with identity formation of adolescents. In Europe, now when I say Europe, I'm talking about the EU, so it's all countries comprised in the EU, and England, because they pulled out of the EU. The increase in new technology now resulted, we have a rise in cyberbullying. And they also refer to it as cyber aggression. It can take place anywhere, anytime, and the problem is people can't escape. It's not like, your mom used to tell you, ignore them and walk away. They can't. It's there. It's in their face. Their phone dings. And there's evidence that bullying and cyberbullying can even continue into adulthood. And I think we all know bullies, but what happens is, because of our identity formation and personality formation, we learn how to deal with it and not put up with it. What you used to care about in middle school, oh, they're going to notice a pimple on my face. When you're an adult, you say, hey, look at this pimple I got, because you are better apt to deal with it. Girls are as likely as boys to experience cyberbullying and also engage in it. I used to kid that I'd rather have a classroom full of boys than girls, because boys, they posture, yeah, what's it to you? With girls, it's very subversive. You don't know what's going on. And when I was teaching, this girl right in front of me started crying. It's like, what's going on? Well, she was being bullied right in front of me, but the kid would put his hand and whisper things across the table to her like this. So you think you're being really attentive, and these things can still happen. Bullying online and offline also seem to be linked. And then, okay, how does it differ from other types of bullying? A lot of times victims don't even know who the bully is, because they can be completely anonymous. You have no idea who they are. Kids these days, it's amazing. They know how to look at the babies in the strollers with iPads. They know technology so well that they can make anonymous accounts, fake accounts. And so they are now bullying these kids 24/7. And they take it and they put it out onto the internet, and people share it and share it and share it. And it just goes, it's a mathematical equation, it just explodes. And abusive online messages, they remain on social media almost permanently. They warned us about that when the internet first came, but you've got to be very careful. Look at Facebook, what some people will post. you're out at a party, let's just say you're drinking a beer, and you're a teacher. There was a case about 10, 15 years ago in Pennsylvania. A teacher was drinking a beer at a party, and she lost her job because they said it was unprofessional behavior. So I always say with my teachers, tell your friends not to tag you so you can have a life. Okay, why does cyberbullying often spiral out of control? Okay, Hiroko Kanoa, an associate professor at IT at Yamagata University in Japan, he released research in May of 2001. Exchanges are often anonymous. Those who are cyberbullied have a hard time fighting. Cyberbullying fulfills a desire for attention, and spectators can easily become bullies. There's a psychological term, it's group mentality. You will go and beat someone up in a group, but you wouldn't do it one-on-one because you think psychologically you're lost in a crowd, you're not responsible for it. And that's why online people tend to just join in and badger people. They hide behind an electronic veil, disguising the identity. They are relentless. It just goes on and on. Okay, now let's talk about the US. Look at these statistics. You've got 52% are reported being cyberbullied. That's just who's reporting it. If you have any dealings with adolescents, you know how that goes. They're not telling. And for 52% to say that they're being bullied is amazing. And they say 33% have experienced threats online, talked about it. Teens, they won't tell their parents. They just don't want to. I mean, this is the time when they're pulling away. And when we talk about the psyche development of adolescents, this is a very healthy thing. They're supposed to pull away from their parents so that they can be independent people as adults. Where children, they're still very tied to their parents. So it's not unusual for them not to tell and try to handle things by themselves or tell their friends or teachers. Teens have been bullied repeatedly through their phones or internet, 25%. And then we have 11% here have had embarrassing or damaging pictures taken of them. There was also an incident in some of the middle schools where the kids were taking their phone and sticking it under the bathroom stalls and taking pictures and then posting them. Some schools have banned phones, but it's, how do you do that? They stick them in their pants. I mean, unless you're going to do a frisk when you come in, there's no way we can make sure nobody has this. Okay, what's the effect? Online communications can be extremely vicious. There's a term in gaming called trolling. And I asked my students about this. And so, what is this trolling? What do they do? And they said the worst offenders are 13-year-old boys. They'll say like, F your mother, I hope she dies, go kill her. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. He goes, no, and that's just something I want to tell you in class. Some of the other things they say, you wouldn't believe it. And I'm talking about students I have that are like 25 years old, saying these kids just take them out because they don't have the psychological wherewithal, the cognitive development to know these are things you don't do. They involvement, they have unknown friends. That's just anyone jumping on a bandwagon. It's like, when in school they used to yell, fight, 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 and people would run and watch. Same thing with this. They're online, they're on Facebook, they're on Snapchat, they see this and they join in because it's not me, I didn't start it. And as I said, they may be emotionally traumatized, so they're not going to tell adults. They're afraid. They think that something else is going to happen. They'll come and get me. And sometimes they say that, if you tell anybody, I will hurt your family, I'll kill your dog. I mean, it's really horrific, some of the things that they say.
Dr. Ambrosetti, I have a question.
Yes.
So you mentioned in Japan that you did some research there, and what happens when they find people who are cyberbullying?
There's a law against it now. The first thing I was saying, they will get prosecuted. What happened was there was in Japan, there was a specific case, one of them, there was a few, but one specifically where a group of friends were playing a game, an online game, and like Minecraft or something, and they did not think this one kid was doing enough to, in the game. And so they went and they beat him up and they bullied him and they got on him. And this is one of their friends. And so they enacted the law. First they denied it, just like us. And then they said, no, we've got to put a law in effect. So they'll get prosecuted. They don't play around anymore because it has become such a widespread problem. Here's how you can kind of tell when kids are being bullied. If their phone rings, if they get a text, they will jump. You'll see that nervous kind of twitch. When I am, they will shut their phone off or leave it at home. They don't want to go to school. They get sick in the morning, just like little children who have school phobia. They seem to be angry, depressed, or frustrated after looking at the computer or their cell phone. There's a change in behavior, and they don't want to talk about it. You ask them, oh, who are you talking to? Nobody. And they get very angry and they'll shut it down. They start becoming withdrawn. They pull away from their friends. And an odd phenomenon is some of their friends will even get involved in the bullying. It's a very strange type of thing. If you walk into a room, they'll shut down the screen. Now, granted, we're talking about adolescents. Sometimes it could be they're looking at porn sites. So, I mean, there's that behavior too. So you have to be careful what you're asking them. But they will shut the computer or they'll flip screens or throw the phone down. They won't talk about what they've been doing on the computer. And if they they have multiple accounts and you'll go in. This is the bully, not the one being bullied. You got to remember. So this is what they're doing. They're trying to hide their behavior. It's kind of like a kid when they hurry up and put it in their pants. The bullies will do this kind of, will perform this kind of behavior. Let's talk about what kinds of cyberbullying are there. We talk about it as a one general term, but it's not. You've got flaming, harassment, denigration, impersonation, outing and trickery, exclusion, and cyberstalking. Okay. Flaming, online fights using electronic messages with angry and vulgar language. Harassment, repeatedly sending offensive, rude, and insulting messages. Now, these are, imagine, I want you to take cyberbullying and think about those first two things, how you saw them when you were in school. Yeah, you saw, people would yell at each other in the hall, but it was over when the teacher stepped in or when they went into a classroom. The same insulting message, they could call things out or send nasty notes, but now they have found a new platform. Denigration, sending and posting cruel gossip or rumors about a person to damage his or her reputation or friendships. Used to be that they would say, oh, that girl, she's so loose, she's doing it with everybody. That was one thing. Now they're posting it online and it just multiplies and gets spread everywhere. Then there's impersonation. When they go in and they make believe there's someone else and they pose as that person, they send messages. There's a case in, I don't remember if it was Tennessee or Kentucky, it was in the news. I mean, it was a big one. It was a few years ago. But a woman who, her daughter, I believe they were cheerleaders, but her good friend, they were very good friends, but then they had some falling out. And the mother created an account and she made believe she was a guy and went in and was texting back and forth with the girl, a teenage girl, and said, oh, I like you, let's go on a date. And while everyone was reading this, but the girl who was being wooed didn't know it was a mother and it wasn't a guy. And then at the end, the mother outed it and said, ha, 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 and the girl ended up killing herself. The problem is there weren't any laws in place. What do? I was just writing to her. I didn't create this. And so that's why the law is trying so hard to catch up. Outing and trickery. Sharing a trick and someone into revealing secrets. Oh, tell me, go on, what'd you do with him? I won't tell anybody. What you don't realize is the broader audience behind that screen. There could be 4 girls sitting there listening to this whole thing, watching and laughing. Exclusion. This is kind of big in elementary school where you just leave one person out. Intentionally excluding someone from an online group such as buddy list. This is where it transcends and then goes into middle and high school because we are social creatures. We need that kind of interaction, and exclusion really hurts you mentally. Then there's cyberstalking, repeatedly sending messages that include threats, harm, or they're highly intimidating. And these kind of things, you're not going to know who I am. They hide behind that anonymity. You don't know who I am, but I see you, and you say anything, and I'm going to come over there and beat you up, or blah blah blah. And that scares the heck out of these kids because they do not have the cognitive or the social ability to handle this. Who's a cyberbully? What are the characteristics? And so we say there are about 5 types. Power hungry, somebody who, the queen bee. who wants to do it, or the big guy on campus. That's power hungry. Retaliating victim could be somebody who was bullied and is now coming back. They found their avenue. I can do it this way, and they'll not know who it is, and so they're not going to beat me up at school, but I can get them. And then a mean girl. I mean, we've all known some mean girls, and if you haven't, well, the movie Mean Girl, and there's a new movie out that I just thought is excellent. It's The Edge of 17. Actually, it's being released tomorrow. It is fantastic, but there's the mean girl, and then vengeful angel, somebody who comes in and sees someone being bullied in school, gets online and does it for them. And then inadvertent bullying. I'm going to talk a little more about this. Power hungry. Seeks attention from peers and maintains control by intimidating the victim. A mean girl, bullies for entertainment and or boredom. Wants to increase her own popularity by putting others down. There are some people who think the only way I can be up is to intimidate you and insult you. And then vengeful, as I said, doing it on the behalf of others. Retaliating, as I said, they're seeking revenge. They want to get in there. They're usually smart, and they're not popular. It's that quiet kid that they're usually marginalized. They're put to the side, and they're not part of the larger group. So it's really easy to pick on them. And then the inadvertent cyberbully. They didn't mean to, but they carelessly used the internet, and they didn't think about the impact they would have on others, and didn't intentionally hurt people. But it may have been they saw a really funny picture of you, and they posted it on their site, and then you start getting it. Bullied people jump on top of that. Okay. Now let's talk about why are teens so involved. You don't really find adults involved in this too much, but why? Let's talk about the brain development. They're in the process of developing the frontal lobes that allow for reasoning and ethical decision making. To make it easy for you, you will ask a kid, when I was teaching middle school, they usually do this to their friends. Think about how many kids you saw, boys, walking down the hall. Their good friend is with them. They open a locker and they try to shove their friend into the locker. And this is their friend. It's because they lack the ability, the cognitive ability, the brain has not fully developed yet to think, if I do this, this will happen. It's the if, then. They can't do that. That's why, they pull a chair out when you go to sit down. They're not thinking, he's going to, crack his head on the floor and he's going to be bleeding everywhere. They don't think it because they can't. And then disinhibition. Use of technologies interferes with their understandings of actions and consequences. They think they're invisible. They can't figure it out. Wait, you know who I am? They're always a bit surprised. As sometimes teachers can tell their students by their handwriting. How'd you know it was me? What, are you kidding me? You always put a heart over your eye. So there are some tells. Now, why else? They say everybody's doing this. What happens online stays online, and it's just a game. It's not real life. And when they interview students who are bullies, kids, adolescents, these are the things they're saying. It's not real. It's just online. It goes away. Once I shut my computer off, it's gone. They don't have the understanding of computer technology that lets them know, no, it stays there. There's something called the hard drive. There's something called the cloud. Okay. Boys versus girls. Girls tend to be more actively involved in online communications, which is a venue for cyberbullying. Boys tend to be interested in gaming, violence against fictional characters. They like that kind of things. Boys in a classroom will posture, as I said, they'll stand up and do this. You want a piece of this? Girls, they don't do this. But with boys, they do it and it's over. Or they say, I'll meet you at 3 o'clock behind the school. Girls, you don't know. And then they pick up their phones. And then the girls, you come in. We've had cases where kids have gone to the principal and their hands are tied. They don't know. As long as it's not happening in school, it's a very tricky legal perspective they're taking. And then recognition. Don't make threats online. You gotta understand, with their development, nobody's telling them these things. And it's just like when you teach a kid how to use a fork. Okay, you use the fork like this, you put the napkin in your lap. Somebody has to actually tell them that you don't make threats online, and you have to explain the consequences to them. It's just like when you were telling them about manners. And trust me, I'm not talking about small children, I'm talking about adolescents. When I taught middle school, I would have to explain to them, you need to, cover your mouth. How many times, we had to teach everybody, do that kind of cough. You have to teach them. So adults may not be able to tell whether the threat is real. They must understand that they could be suspended, expelled, or even arrested now. Report threats or distressing material. If there is a threat or distressing material, it could be very real. It's extremely important to report it to an adult. You have to go and you have to let someone know. Just tell one person. And sometimes what teachers will do is they'll have a jar on their desk. And if you want to tell them something, you can anonymously put it in there. And I had a 12-year-old, I was teaching 7th grade at the time, and somebody put a note in the jar and explained to me that this 12-year-old who just turned 12 was having sex with a senior. And so, those are some ways we can then, and I went and talked to the girl and called in a counselor and such. But you need to encourage people, your students, your children, your friends, to talk to you in a non-threatening manner. Oops. Tips for teachers. Discuss online behavior with your students. If you wouldn't say something in person, don't say it online. Encourage students to report the cyberbullying. And as I said, keep an anonymous comment box somehow that they can come to you. You've got to be careful though, because in education, if a student says to you, can you keep a secret? And they tell you they're being cyberbullied or beat up, you can't. It's by law, you have to report these things. And they need to know that all kinds of bullying is wrong. You can't harass people, you can't threaten them. Even though they don't understand the difference between online not being real and real life, they think you have to be present to do it. And that's just not true. Okay, and respond. How do they respond? The other thing is, one, we have to tell them what cyberbullying is. The other is we have to teach them this is how you respond. Kind of how you teach kids in your class or your family how to stand up to bullying. My daughter was being bullied by her friends in 4th grade. And I went to the teacher, the teacher was very good, the counselor. And finally I was like, okay, I've had enough of this. And I was teaching at the time. This girl, the mean girl, would do is pick one girl out of the group of 6 that they would turn their back on for a week. And then they would switch. And so I just went straight to the girl's house. And I said, but I think that's the New Yorker in me. I went to her house with my daughter because I wanted her to see this is what a strong woman does. And I sat down with her mother and I talked to the kid and I said, you've got to stop doing this. I'm not going to allow it. And she was, I'm so sorry. I had no idea, as only an adolescent can do. But she stopped, but she moved to somebody else. She ultimately ended up being pulled from school. She was having some real problems. But that's not unusual for the bully to have underlying problems. Remember, those bullied often become bullies. And so that's another thing. You have to look, and not only do you stop them from bullying, but now we've got to look at the psyche of this kid and figure out, talk to counselors, what's going on? What are the underlying problems here that they feel like they have to strike out before they get struck? So now, responding, we tell them, save evidence, emails, IM, blogs, web pages, print everything out. Don't delete it. Just put it into a file because the kid may not know how to find out who's doing it, but somebody who's an expert in IT, like Dr. Gotro, could then, do some research and find it out. Stop or remove material, contact ISP, website, etc., trying to, to tell them, stop. I know some people have contacted Google to tell them that they were being harassed, and then Google has some things in place that will step in. Try to identify the cyberbully if possible, because they'll tell you, yeah, I saw you in science. Well, now you know that kid's in your science class. Or I saw you at karate this afternoon. They know. There are some tells. Contact parents of cyberbullies, school, or police. Because sometimes just sitting down with the police will, they'll sit down and explain to them and explain the law and the rules. Sometimes that works. Ignore, block, or delete them. Sometimes, and that goes back to ignore your bullies and turn around. Calmly and strongly tell them to stop. Stand up for yourselves and be assertive. But remember, we have to teach our kids how to do this because sociologically speaking, females are taught to be rule followers, to be good girls, to act like a lady. So we have not really been socialized to be aggressive. And so you have to teach them, no, this is okay. You stand up for yourself and you don't let anyone talk to you like that. Okay, now issues for educators. School threat assessment and suicide prevention must incorporate online speech. I bring this in because there is, suicide is the number 2 leading cause of death for adolescents between, 15 and 30. It's number 2 reason for death. It's not worth it. I don't care for you to lose anybody. But it has risen. It used to be 3, the third reason for death. 15 to 30 years old, it's the second leading cause of death. Because these kids don't have the cognitive and social abilities yet to deal with it, and they don't know who to turn to, and it looks like it's an uphill battle they cannot win, and they don't know where else to go. And a lot of times when it comes to the point where they're going to commit suicide, you don't know until it's too late. Safe school personnel must be able to immediately access and review online material posted by a student in the event of a report of concern. Again, I remember one of my students, he was writing filthy emails, because remember, they're becoming aware of their sexual identity. He was writing filthy emails to another student, but he was doing it on the school computer. And so we had a record of what he was saying. He denied it, and I just held up the paper and I said, this is your station and this is what you said. And then immediately, and I called his father, and his father was a pastor. That didn't go over real well. But these are the kind of things that we have to be able to access anything they're doing online. Educate staff, students, and parents about safe and responsible internet use of critical importance, but also what our role is. So many times some people think, oh, they'll work it out. No, they're ill-equipped to deal with it. They don't know. They don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the development yet to deal with these kind of things. Think about how you as an adult feel when people say things to you. You always kind of remember, I should have said this, I should have said that. These kids don't even get to that point till about they're 24 years old. 24 years old is when it is completely developed. And a child's brain development, the most it develops is at 2 years old. And that's when, they have the big head. And that's why we call them toddlers, because they kind of walk like this. But their brain is growing at unbelievable strides. The second big change in your brain is when they're an adolescent. And that's why the brain is rewiring, everything is changing. And so everything that's happening in their brain, and then they're dealing with this, it's all in the act of becoming an adult. And so they need us still, even though they don't think we do. Okay, so now some resources. I put up some resources for you just in case, you want to use them for your class, your friends, some of us know, people who have been bullied, some of us have been bullied. I just watched a TED Talk. It was posted last week, and I showed it to my class. And it was the mother of one of the Columbine, Colorado shooters. And she talked about it, and she said, I talk about my son's death as a suicide. And she said, now, please, I don't mean to insult anybody who was done harm by my son. I don't mean to belittle it or anything. I say that because I want to know what his suicidal thoughts, how it led to murder. And a few months after he killed himself, after killing all those kids and the teacher, she found a piece of paper, and it was written 2 years earlier when he was 15. And on that piece of paper, he said that he was cutting himself, and he wishes he could get a gun so he could kill himself because he was so miserable. Now, I explained that if the mom, she said, if I knew that 2 years before, I could have gotten him help, something, intervened. But she didn't find it until afterwards. She said, we thought we did everything right with him. And she didn't. He was being bullied at school, and he did not know how to deal with it. And so he retaliated by going into school with a friend and killing everybody and then committing suicide. There's also the case in San Diego about 10 years ago where the 15-year-old boy, he moved from Maryland. In Maryland, he was an honor student. Did really well. He left his Maryland home, he was living with his mom, to go live with his dad in San Diego. At his going away party in Maryland, teachers came, they told what a wonderful kid he was so alike, had a really nice group of friends. In San Diego, he was a new kid, obviously, he's in high school. He was a slight kid. He hadn't really gone through that growth spurt yet, and he was still kind of small. He was being, by the words of a teacher, they would hold him upside down and shake him and take his lunch money. They stole the sneakers off his feet. They stole his skateboard, and he couldn't take it anymore. And he came to school with a gun, and he killed people. He then pleaded guilty because he said, I want to spare the families the stress and emotional turmoil of having to go through a trial. This is the kid, the same kid. A teacher spoke on his behalf at his trial and said, I went to administration. I told them somebody has to step in. He is being bullied. He's being harassed. And it went on until he felt, and that's what happens with these kids, they feel that there's nothing else they can do. And unfortunately, for quite a number of them, suicide is the only way out. And because they don't have the mental capacity to think further. And so that's why it is everyone else's job. They talk about a village to raise a child. I know how much I hate that expression, but you've got to watch out. You've got to think and you've got to listen and keep an eye for who's being marginalized, who's being pushed to the side. Those are the kids we have to watch for. And even the popular ones, they often get into a funk where they think they don't have any friends. And so now there is no definite way to deal with bullying and now cyberbullying and cyber aggression, but it is a world problem, so much so that the EU from all those countries got together to decide what laws can we enact, how can we take this head on, what do we do? And I chose Japan because I went to Japan last June. I brought students as a study abroad, and we stayed there, and I gave this talk at the university. And it was amazing because just like those kids that don't want to talk to you in public, there were probably about 350 people at this talk at the university. Afterwards, a few of them waited for people to leave, and then they came and they stood by me, and they wanted to talk about it. And I said, what's going on? Oh, I had a friend, which you always take with a grain of salt. Did you have a friend, or is it you? And told me how they were being harassed and how they were goofing around and took a picture and somebody took their phone and posted it and the person wanted to kill themselves. And so they each had these quiet little stories, but as long as they stay quiet little stories and we don't address them, it's going to just continue and not get any better. It's absolutely awful. And do you have comments about this? I want to stop a minute.
Actually, Debbie, you have a couple questions in the chat window. So one of them is, what are teachers doing that's effective that decreases cyberbullying?
Well, that's a good point. There's, in middle schools, there's a thing called an advisory. And what they do is they usually take like a 20-minute period. It's usually after lunch. It's that quiet period, sometimes a study hall. And you bring kids in and you talk to them. I piloted it for my middle school when I was teaching. And I would always open it up, tell me what you're thinking about. And I said, I want everyone's head down for a minute, don't peek. And I said, how many of you feel like you don't have friends? When I tell you out of like 30 kids, probably 25 put their hands up. And then I said, okay, I want you to open your eyes and keep your hands up. And they did, and they were like, you don't think you have friends? So first is opening the dialogue, talking about it, because they could not believe, oh my goodness, you feel this? Yeah, and I talk about experiences so that they don't feel alone, because oftentimes they feel like they're the only one. I'm the only one this is happening. Nobody likes me. They all hate me. And some of these comments online are, nobody likes you, go kill yourself. That seems to be a common statement on these things. So addressing it and not hiding it. Too often we say that, that's just kids being kids. Like the case in Florida, probably 15 years ago, a 6th grade girl, boys were pulling her bra strap, snapping it in the back. And she told the teacher. She told them to stop first. And then she told the teacher. And the teacher's like, oh, and then her mother got involved and called the principal. Ended up going to court. And the ruling was that's boys being boys. So the girl learned an important lesson from this. I mean, good and bad. But what happens is something like that will be publicized, just like I think it was Tennessee where the woman pretended she was the guy. Once they're talked about and it's not hidden anymore and put in the shadows, you find that more and more people have issues or know somebody who's cyberbullied or has been cyberbullied. And, who is this? And you find out. That's why, I know adults who won't answer their phone if they don't know the number. It's putting it out there and talking about it and bringing it up as a teacher, not waiting for someone to come to you, because chances are they will not come to you. So just start talking about it. And, you can use fictional things. Yeah, I was watching this gaming thing. When I taught my adolescents class about, cyberbullying, and we were talking about gaming and trolling, you wouldn't believe how many of them came up and said, yeah, I've had that before. Yeah, they did this to me or they did that. That opens the dialogue.